Hello and welcome to the Point to Rise show. This is your host, Suzanne Prochelle, former international ballerina that found her passion in mindset, business, and technology, and is today the founder of Rise Media. It is my purpose to use all the experiences of my past to create a better, financially sustainable future for the performing arts industry. And that starts with every single one of us. I believe that being you is your superpower. And I am here to guide you, empower you, inspire you, and give you all the resources you need to rise above what you think you're capable of. Every week, I'll bring you free shows featuring guests, collaboration, and mini episodes to ensure that you have the support in your journey as a performer. I want you to know that you are not alone. Stop chasing and start creating. Your success starts now, here with you. So let's go. Welcome back to the Point to Rise podcast. I am so grateful to be here with you today. Thank you for tuning in. So today's guest is nobody less than my dear friend, Corene Phelps. She is a native Washingtonian clinical hypnotherapist and business and life success coach. Corey started her personal development journey after the birth of her daughter. She was in a career that made her miserable, and she knew she was meant for more. Unwilling to settle for a mediocre existence, she became obsessed with what creates peak performance and how to harness untapped potential. The last 10 years have been a crash course in self-love, business, community empowerment, becoming resourceful, creating wealth, and doing what it takes to just freaking go for it. Her mission is to help others discover their inner power, create abundance, and realize their deeper purpose. Now, Corey and I met in a beautiful mastermind of definitely a woman and a couple that has influenced and changed our life in so many ways. And she and I have always been close in many ways. And I find it very important to share her story on this podcast because it is a testimonial that our mindset, our not settling is really truly creating our life. And I find performing artists at times think that we have to settle, that there's nothing else out there for us. But yet we create everything that we want to see and create what we are capable of. So without no further ado, here's our interview. Hello, love. Thank you so much for being here. I am so flattered and honored and excited to have this conversation with you. Thank you, sweetheart.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to be here and over the moon, like completely flattered to be sitting here having this conversation for your podcast.
Wonderful. Okay, so serendipitously, we're recording today. My episode on your podcast, the Super Expander, just came out today. And I want to throw the question you asked me right back at you. So who is Corene? Who are you? What lights you up? What gets you out of bed every day?
Oh my goodness. I am curious, a forever learner. I'm actually kind of a detective. Which is really funny because I oftentimes think of myself as a big visionary who doesn't like the details, but I am very acutely aware of them. What else am I? I'm fun loving. I am an adventurer. I love people. I am highly empathetic and emotional, even though many people would like to disagree with you on that. I'm a mother. I am a daughter. I'm just somebody who truly, absolutely loves life and loves building things, being part of community, building community.
I would like to add that you're a giver too. Yeah. So you have, gosh, we know each other for what, 2 years, a year and a bit now through a mastermind that you and I were in.
It's longer than that. It's actually 2 years now.
2 years?
I think. Yeah.
Pardon me.
I know. I have to say that because it's like the defining sort of container of it is the beginning of COVID, right? And so, I mean, we're hitting, yeah,
Hitting
because
2
that was
years.
the mass. Yeah,
I was in denial of that. Okay. Well,
I know. It doesn't seem like, because we all thought it was only going to last 2 weeks. That's why.
okay. Yep. There we go. Perfect. This journey that you've been on, I mean, I'm watching what you do. I'm inspired by what you're doing and how you are consistently learning and are not afraid to just tap into more of what you're capable of. Can you give us a little bit of an overview on what you're doing right now and how you're helping women to truly
Yeah,
step into their power?
absolutely. I am coaching female entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders, big visionaries in really harnessing the power of their subconscious mind to show up fully in their power. So reprogramming their old conditioning so they can allow the strongest, most connected, most intuitive version of themselves to show up powerfully. And I'm doing that through coaching. And the really primary foundation of my coaching has become hypno breathwork.
We'll get there in a moment. Can we take apart what the subconscious or the past has made us and how we can break through these kind of habits and beliefs that we have inherited, maybe through our parents, maybe through society, teachers, whatever it is? Like, can you explain to us how all of this works?
Absolutely. So your thoughts and beliefs really originate inside of your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind was formed between the time of 0 and 7 years old. So we tend to think that the decisions that we make, the feelings that we have, the beliefs that we have are part of like our conscious choice, which really only makes up about 5% of how our brain works. The conscious brain, it's roughly 5%, and the subconscious accounts for about 95%. So imagine if your subconscious mind is formed from the 0 to 7 time frame, you essentially have a 7-year-old driving the bus of your emotions, your thoughts, your beliefs, unless you have done the work to go in and rework them to match what it is that you choose to think, believe, and feel in your adult life. And so subconscious programming that happens during that time frame really does come from your parents primarily, or your caregivers, your teachers, even your peers. So we are basically a sponge from 0 to 7, just taking in everything from the outside world, which forms the lens with which we see life, we see the world. And when you hear, very oftentimes we're hearing a lot of people talk about trauma these days, and that's actually typically where there's elements of trauma that get stored into the subconscious mind. And I use the word trauma a little bit differently in the fact that a lot of people think that trauma has to do with an assault or an accident or some sort of physical harm, but trauma is literally just not having your needs met. So it could be that you wanted to get a doll at the toy store and your mother said no, but was like really mean about it and made you feel bad and feel guilty for asking or for wanting. And it made you just really, I don't know, feel guilty, feel embarrassed, all these sorts of things that get stored as trauma inside of your subconscious mind and can greatly influence our relationships later, our relationship with money later in life.
Wow. So this one, let's go there a little bit because yes, you're right. We see trauma as something that is this momentum of or momental impact that we have, seen some tragedy or something. And where that is not wrong, small events can cause the same reaction and be stored just as much in our subconscious and how we behave later on in life and what we believe about ourselves. And that all
Absolutely.
is just, when you said, it can be happening through your mother saying no to something and making you feel guilty around actually wanting something more and telling you that you are not worthy of it, or you're translating it even as in, oh, I don't deserve that, so I won't be asking for anything anymore. How does that translate into our adult life? Like, what do we see in our adult life happening when we have this kind of trauma in our bodies?
Oh, so many different things. Anxiety, definitely like certain stress responses. The relationship we have with money is such a big one, coming from a place of lack. So either being petrified to spend money, to invest in yourself, playing out patterns with money. So digging yourself into debt, paying it off, but then doing it right back over, or like overspending, reckless spending, that sort of thing, or just completely the opposite and just not being able to part with a penny at all. And then also using money as control or power. It also shows up in just relationships. So it can show up as like your attachment style in a romantic relationship. In business, not being afraid to be seen and like really showing up and being visible, which if we're in business, we need to be visible.
Yeah. Well, but for me, it shows up in all of it, potentially could show up in all of these ways. And it also shows up in like being afraid of asking for help.
Mm.
Because if you don't feel worthy of having anything, then how can you feel worthy of receiving from somebody else, right? And I think definitely a journey that I'm on, and the physical signs that are coming up that keep us from actually taking the action to get to the other side of that, it's just tremendous. How can that show up besides anxiety? Like what are other signs that we're actually experiencing a kind of a trigger moment where trauma is rising up again?
Sometimes panic attacks could come in. Definitely, when I would say stress response, literally feeling paralyzed, that you can't speak up for yourself, or you don't have the words to communicate properly, almost essentially shutting down, blocking people out. It could cause you to have temper flares, anger could come up. So inside of relationships, instead of calmly communicating, you get like kind of this like pivot on a dime into sort of a temper response, an anger response.
Wow, which just you explained the whole state of the world right now. Yeah. So, boy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely, if you had to not have your needs met as a child, is definitely one of the most common things, where you could just be going along and whatever it is that triggers you, you just snap.
Right. You know what I find so intriguing is that this kind of work is, I feel, so imperative for anybody to know. If all of us would just do 1% every day of understanding how we're working and how we're reacting, and gaining more awareness in why are we who we are, and why are we doing what we're doing, and why are we reacting the way we're reacting, and taking it apart, and I think all of us would be capable of so much more, and the world would be a better place to just use that whole picture. But I truly believe it would be make such
Oh
a
my
difference.
gosh. We all have trauma. We all need to
Yeah.
heal our trauma. And if we did, it would truly, truly change the world. Because you're able to, once you heal your own trauma, you're able to see in someone else that, like, you don't take it personally. So when we're in our trauma and haven't healed it, the person that snaps at us then turns and makes us snap at someone else or respond in whatever way. But when you've done the work, you are able to see that that's just like the lens of that person's world at that moment, and it has nothing to do with you. So rather than the reactionary triggered you can just literally respond and be like, this isn't like, I don't want to engage in this, but I see you.
Yeah. And no judgment, right? Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you're where you're at, and that's okay. Wow. Okay. So, why do you think so many people don't want to go there? Like, what is holding them back?
Mm. I'll even speak from my own case of this. Prior to really digging in, I'm thinking I'm so self-aware. I've been doing the work, I've been, personal development, but I hadn't really dug into the subconscious pieces, like delving back into releasing childhood wounds and that sort of healing in that way. And I just totally thought that I didn't need the work, but I was one of those people who would not be very patient and could easily lose my temper. And I would say probably mostly my daughter could speak with this, and not like screaming, but I could go from being totally fine to being my stress levels going through the absolute roof. And my response, and then it would cause these cyclical patterns in our relationship where she and I would be bickering, and I'd feel guilty, she'd be mad, and it was literally this like awful cycle. So I became acutely aware of what the real source of that was and what I needed to heal when I went back and started doing the inner work there through subconscious reprogramming. And I feel like I just babbled on. I'm not sure if I
No,
fully
no, no,
answered
no.
your question.
No. I think it's why are we not doing it? Like, what is it that's holding us back?
Oh, yeah. So I think, so thinking of that like particular thing is, I think I didn't want to see what the skeletons were in the closet. So I was fearful of what was there. What was I going to look like on the other side of that? What was digging up and seeing any of that really going to do to help me? I had already done all of the work to like so neatly compartmentalize and sweep it under the rug. Couldn't it just stay there? And who has time to deal with the heaviness? Who wants to be crying? Who wants to feel, guilty and bad? But it's so liberating. So on the other side of that is so much freedom.
And I think we don't know what that other side feels until we actually really truly get there. Because I remember my first experience of starting the work and then finding myself in a like a 3 months, I can hardly move. I'm in bed. I wouldn't say depressed, but I'm crying a lot and I feel like meh, not creative, not like feeling like something needs to be released. And I could not put my finger on it. And I tried to get through it, in good old dancer fashion. And that just didn't work there anymore. And allowing ourselves to have whatever has been installed in us many, many moons ago to just pass through and be okay with the process is one of the hardest lessons I've ever learned. Because we're so like society is so goal oriented, right? It's like the house, the boat, the car, the paycheck, the fame, the newspaper article, the certificate. But we're not enough yet, and this is my opinion, talking about a process without judging it and understanding that the process most of the time is a mess, can be messy, and that's okay. Nobody wants to touch the mess. The people that don't want to touch the mess are the ones that are not going through it and don't know why it is and what's on the other side. So I really want to encourage everybody that the mess is really where the beauty is going to be poured out, because it's just, it needs to be, that's where we find our strength, I believe. This is where we find our own power. This is where we actually get closer to ourselves again and can with confidence say, hey, this is who I am. And if you don't align with who I am, that's okay. I don't need you to validate me. I can give that to myself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so much of what you said, absolutely. Yes, totally. And I think when you start to really look at the whole idea of it being so messy in there is a piece of it that I think, truth be told, that it never actually ends. It just becomes this cyclical piece of kind of peeling the onion back, but you're more willing to go in. But if you don't go in and visit that sort of depth and the shadows there, you really can't access true happiness. You can't access true, deep, real, unabiding love just for yourself, but for others. Like, because if you've closed off this part of you, this like harden this part of you, that's what I think when you hear people talking about just like going through the motions or feeling numb or a shell of themselves, that is truly epitomizes that. It's like really needing to be cracked open and go in there and do the work.
And it's so worth it. So worth it. And I don't know how often I've said this, but I truly believe if I had done or access or given myself permission to do more of that work earlier on in my life, when I was still active as a dancer, my entire career would have been completely different. Like I would have most likely been able to tap into my potential, which was huge when I was that young. However, I always thought I'm not worthy of it. So yeah, do the work now. That's really what I'm saying, because it can open up doors that you don't even think are there for you.
Oh, yeah. I actually think it will be so interesting to see in years from now, because so many people are becoming acutely aware of this work and being much more conscious and bringing it into their parenting styles and how that will influence our children.
And the next generation, right? Like, what is the
Mhm.
world going to look like in the next 50 years?
Yeah.
With us making that first step. Okay, I'm not going to go there. So let's talk about breath. Can you explain a little bit what the benefits are? And I'm asking the question because we all take, me included, breathing as like the most common privilege that's really out there, and we're not really consciously taking into consideration how it can shift our energy and how it can, determine what kind of actions we take. So if you can explain a little bit around what you've learned and what you're teaching right now, I'd love it.
Absolutely. Well, your breath it's your life force. And the most of us, we are walking around actually not really fully breathing, somewhat metaphorical. So we're not fully living, but I mean, truly we're shallow breathing. So we're not really fully oxygenating the body and the blood. It's breathing deeply truly just heals so much in your body. But when we go in from a conscious breath, when you go into a breath work meditation or someone's guiding you through it, I teach hypno breath work, which is a conscious connected breath, which is used in multiple different modalities of breath work. It's 2 inhales in, so into your belly, into your chest, and you exhale out. So what I teach combines 3 modalities all together. So it's breath work, hypnosis, and visioning. So the breath work piece allows you to oxygenate the body, highly oxygenate the body, which opens up essentially for access to the subconscious mind. So as you know, subconscious mind, we want to work with the what's going on in our subconscious mind so we can make it work for the life that we really truly desire. So the breath allows us to open the doors to the subconscious mind, and hypnosis allows us to rewire limiting beliefs, past patterning. It allows us the oxygen moves the energy, stuck energy out of the body, and we rewire the subconscious mind. The visioning piece, which is the last piece, allows us to truly step into the person, the habit, the being, all of those things in the visioning process, which is what is really needed in order to create the life that you desire. So professional athletes are known to use visioning in their work. So prior to a game, they will think about the game and scoring the basket or scoring the touchdown, and they'll visualize it happening. So it's essentially rehearsing what's going to happen. And you can, through using mirror neurons, basically have the experience of it already happening. So when you're actually in the real life situation, you know how to act and behave. You've already been there. For example, Michael Phelps, actually, he won I think it was the gold medal. And prior to that race, and he did it, his goggles broke. And his coach had basically tasked him to think about all the possible scenarios that could happen to him in that race. And he had rehearsed his goggles breaking through visualizing that breaking during the race. And so when it happened to him, it didn't feel like a surprise. He knew exactly how to handle it. And he won the gold medal. So the visioning piece allows you to sort of step into that quantum field and bring your dream life into the here and now.
Yep. So I'm taking a breath right now because it sounds so simple, right? It really sounds simple. Once you understand how, let's say, the law of attraction and visualization and breath and how it all is interconnected, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Do it every day and you're going to live the life of your dreams, right? It starts with, are you actually thinking and believing that you're capable of dreaming that big, or if you're worthy of being that person that you really want to be? You know, when I look at performing artists, and for me, dancers particularly are athletes. We train like beasts. We have to, you know, our body is in top shape. However, that kind of a piece of visualizing and understanding is something that is training worthy and requires daily training as well. Yet it is not part of the training yet, which I don't understand. I don't get. It is like, why are we doing that? You know? So I understand that your daughter is in one of the most prestigious art school at the current moment. And when you and I interviewed on your podcast, you shared what you asked her to do. And I would love you to share that story with my audience as well.
Yeah. So my daughter goes to school in New York at Parsons School of Design. And so there was a lot of people when she was applying to college that thought this was the craziest thing, that she was going to go off to a art college, just art. That's all she was going to do. And how is it going to prepare her for life? And I will even admit, for a moment, as I'm getting ready to pay this tuition, as I'm sending her off, I was having a little bit of these thoughts too. It's one of the most expensive schools in the country. But I knew in my gut that I wanted her to follow her dreams. And I also know that when you truly follow your dreams, you can make loads of money doing it, no matter what an outside societal perspective thinks. So like, gone are the days, I believe, of the starving artist. But you do have to learn some things in order to advocate and negotiate for yourself, because if you are going to be an artist, you need to know how to run your artistic endeavors like a business, negotiate for yourself, to understand finances, to understand contracts and all of those sort of things, so that you can make your dreams and your passions actually a reality and make them fruitful and support you, and actually literally energetically get compensated for the thing that you have poured your heart and soul into. So when I agreed that I would pay for her to go to art school and follow her dreams, I was like, the only thing you have to promise me is that you will take a few business classes, so that you get it, you understand, and you at least go into this life knowing how to monetize.
Thank you for that, because there were, two choices for you. You could have said no and believed as an artist, you won't be able to make any money, and that's not what I'm paying for, or just let her go and not have any ask or setting her up for future success. And I truly believe is that the reason why artists nowadays are struggling is because they don't think that business is part of being an artist. And we have put this into society for, oh gosh, I think forever, that business has nothing to do with arts, where I completely disagree. both interact with each other. There is a bridge where both meet in the middle, literally, and where both can really collaborate together and make a beautiful new venture happening. And that really starts with artists, emerging artists, knowing of what they're worth, asking for what they want, understanding that they're running their own business and how important that is, not waiting to be discovered, but discovering themselves and saying, hey, here I am, that's my worth, and who wants to partner with me? And I think that is something so beautiful, something that you and I connected over. And I just thank you for changing that world and that thinking. Yeah, it's so important.
I mean, I think it's so important. And I mean, you really think about the people who are raving fans of art happen to typically be affluent, right? So they go and they watch theater, they go to the ballet, the opera, they buy expensive art pieces for their homes. And so the artist should be energetically compensated for their talents. And the only thing standing between that happening is the advocating for yourself. Because I mean, it's essentially, I think, a lot like you think of a personal brand, right? You as an artist, you are a personal brand, and you have to really approach it as such.
Yes. And I think that's a gap too in the teaching and in the believing that everybody has the power and the right to be a personal brand, and even the knowledge and I would say the worth to be a personal brand. What we're seeing, as personal brands on Instagram is, those big names, and we think, oh, it's never going to be me, and I don't have that kind of story. And that's exactly what's in the way, that kind of belief that you're just as important. You may have not fallen off a roof and broken your leg and had 200,000 surgeries. However, discover your story and understand that your story matters, and that whatever your brand could be is for somebody out there to be discovered, and they can relate to it, they can learn from it, they can find community in that. I find that marketing within arts altogether is something that we're like, we're why do we need to sell ourselves? Selling ourselves is dirty. I'm a sellout. It's the not understanding that in 2022, promoting ourselves, showing the world what we have to offer versus hoping that somebody's going to come and see us. It is so important to know about that. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think it's every single person's job to, I mean, we're all selling ourselves in some regard, and it's not a sellout sort of thing. If you won't show up and promote yourself, who will? And then also, who's going to believe in you? If you don't believe in yourself, who's going to believe in you?
Okay. Go back 15 seconds. There's a little button. If you don't believe in yourself, who else is going to do that for you? Oof, so good. Okay. What you got going right now, love? Like, where can we find you? You have a Facebook group. You do phenomenal things. Tell us all about it.
I do have a Facebook group, the Amplify Facebook group. I'm most active on Instagram, and you can find me at Corene, Corene, period, Phelps, Phelps, on Instagram. Slide over there, say hello. I answer all of my DMs, and occasionally popping these group breathwork sessions up on the gram. So if I piqued your interest, come over, pay attention, and come join a class, experience the hypno breath work.
Also has a pretty podcast that I can only recommend you guys to listen to.
Ah, yes, the Super Expander podcast. Yeah. You should come over and listen to our episode.
Isn't that funny when you just start out in the podcast, you're like, oh, I forgot.
Yeah, I forgot the Super Expander podcast. Come listen. And it was a totally different conversation. So you should come check that one out.
Awesome. Okay, I have one more question for you, which normally leads to more questions, but let's assume your 16-year-old self would actually listen to you. You could sit her down, you could talk to her. what would you tell her? Something that you learned that could perhaps make life a little bit easier for her.
Mm. You don't always have to be so tough.
Mm. I felt that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay to show your emotions, and what I mean by that is that you can be angry and still communicate. You can be really, really sad, but still experience happiness. I definitely built up a massive brick wall when I was young and was not letting anybody in. So you just don't have to be so tough. And if you, the more open and vulnerable you are, the more rich your life will be.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Why do we do that? Why do we build that wall? Why do we think we got this? Like it's me against the world. Like I can do this. I don't need anybody. Why do we do that?
We don't want to be hurt. I mean, I think for me personally, it was watching, it was the dynamic of my parents. And I was like, that will not be my situation. That will not be my life. I will not be dependent on a man. I will be able to do this all by myself. So, and I feel like at that point in my life, I felt that for a long time and way out of my teenage and 20s into my, I think I just learned this lesson a few years ago. um, that you you can ask for help. It's okay to ask for help, and asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And I did not have to, or I don't have to act like a man in this world. I don't have to put off that like tough girl energy in order to get things done. And I think a lot of women can really resonate with this, because we tend to feel in this world, I mean, you're like constantly having to like brush off innuendos or comments or people thinking that maybe you got somewhere because you're a woman, or because you're an attractive woman, or because of whatever it happens to be that has not to do with your merit, or that because you're a woman that you can't do it.
Yep.
All
Because
the things.
yet again, society told us to, or beliefs, or whatever that might be. I think I'm learning that over and over again now. I was always in denial of like, why we're different? Why would anybody put a divide between two genders, first of all, or anything really? Why can't we just all be the same? Because it really truly is simple. It's so simple. Like just don't.
Yeah.
That's for me, that's the most simple thing. This is why I don't like to talk about racial division either, because for me, it just makes no sense. I have no explanation because for me, it is so simple. It's all
Yeah.
just a choice away. We don't have to buy into these beliefs anymore. It's us that keep it still alive. Every single one of us that, says yes to it, or anyhow, tangent. But when we're looking at like female founders, and yes, we're rising up all together and we're entrepreneurs, but yet again, there's one day out of the whole year dedicated to celebrate women. Like why are we still having that in place?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
It perpetuates it, right? And so many people don't see that completely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think another piece of the reason why that happens too is I think and this is I think a feminine thing, is disappointment. That is like the worst thing for a woman to feel, is disappointment. And I say that because I think men don't experience disappointment in the same, not that they don't experience disappointment, but I think that there's this expectation or hope or pouring into others that is a very feminine quality. And very early on in, I think, many women's life, we become disappointed and become very acutely aware it's this like the worst feeling to feel.
So is that the reason why I just don't want to ever disappoint anybody, including myself? Yeah. Oh gosh. So that's another episode. Hey, my love, thank you so much. That was a rich conversation around why it is so imperative to stop the daily trend and like stop and breathe and take account of where we're at, where we want to be, how we're acting, like leveling up our awareness and understanding that it always will be a process. Like there is no end to it. We will, have our little checkpoints and those moments where we feel, oh, I have arrived, but it still keeps going over and over again. So we're sending you so much love. Thank you for being here. Share this episode if it resonated with you. If there's something that you don't agree with, we want to hear about this. And till next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. If this message resonates with you, please pass it on to someone who needs to hear this right now. And if you like what you've heard, your feedback will go a very long way. If you just take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, that would mean the world to me. Till next time, point at yourself to rise to all that you are capable of.